Victoria and Tasmania, this is your weekly weather forecast for the 7th of June. There are scattered showers, rainfall, light winds, bit of mix on and off as multiple cold fronts move through these southern states this week. So you'll either have pretty clear, still days or some slightly windier, showery days. However, we've got multiple instances of fog across large parts of the states on both states as well. So that's something to think about as we go forward. Let's start off looking at daily rainfall. Let's start on Monday. You can see we will not have anything really. Scattered showers again on Tuesday. But by Wednesday, the front has moved through into those southern states. And we're seeing in the alpine regions in Victoria and down in the north coast of Tasmania, 15 to 25 mils of rain. That calms down onto Thursday. Friday as well, scattered showers, but you can see the next front moving through, and that arrives on Saturday. Now, it will mainly affect the the west coast or the western side of Victoria, up into the ranges as well as those air masses are lifted with the topography. But it is the northwest of Tasmania that will receive most of that rainfall, 25 to 50 millimeters. That should back off on Sunday as well. But we're talking about forecasts, 6, 7 days in advance here. So I'd keep my eye out on how much those totals actually come to when we get there. Let's actually have a look at the wind gusts because I think that's largely a more interesting story this week as the fronts move through. I would say both of these fronts sit a bit further south. So Victoria really shouldn't be receiving major weather from these, but Tassie will. So let's start looking at Monday. Monday, we have the calm conditions as we're still under this high, but you can see over in the distance here the front coming over. As we said, that arrives sort of Tuesday into late Wednesday, and that could see wind gusts from 60 to 90 kilometers an hour hitting the west coast of Tasmania, as well as just very, very, very the southwest coast of Victoria as well. It does not come up into the Gippsland regions, though the Gippsland area stays nice and stable throughout that first front. All right, that front moves over again on Wednesday where we get more wind on that west coast. And by the end of Wednesday, it's off and we're under some stable air. Victoria, almost no wind on Wednesday, which is going to contribute to those foggy conditions. Same for Thursday and into Tassie. Friday, you can see that next sort of front approaching, but not as strong as this first one. Again, Tassie bears the brunt of it. They're getting over 90 kilometers an hour on the west coast again. But as I said, let's stay tuned for what happens with that cold front. All right. And last thing I want to do is look at air temperatures for both states because, as we will see, they get down into the 0 to 5 degrees Celsius up and anywhere with some decent elevation. So when that shower and moisture comes, it could definitely fall as snow. That the minimum temperatures, I should say, they rise as we go later in the week as well. Okay, let's actually have a look into some locations. Let's start with Wangaratta. Wangaratta, we've got quite low temperatures on Tuesday, 2 degrees Celsius, but that is bringing some frost risk there with it as well, and some fog risk coming in later. The spraying conditions aren't great because of those low temperatures. Spray conditions again worsen on Wednesday into Thursday. They improve on Friday. But what I want you to see Wednesday and Thursday, as we said, as those wind conditions still, we have that fog risk. We're going to move down into Warrnambool now, just to show you, I suppose, two parts of Victoria. And just look at the rainfall. It is not major rainfall. It is scattered light showers. And the minimum temperatures aren't quite as low here, but the spraying conditions are also fairly poor at the start of the week. They improve in that Thursday and Friday period. The frost and fog risks fog risks don't come down into Wangaratta quite as much, and that's just because there's a lot more wind that's hitting that coastal region compared to up in. Oh, sorry, I'm talking about Warrnambool. Warrnambool is not going to have that frost and fog because the wind is a lot stronger on the coast, whereas up in Wangaratta, it's a lot more sheltered. There are light winds throughout the week, and that's why it's quite foggy down there. Okay, Sheffield, the last town I'm going to talk about for today. And I love Sheffield. Sheffield, what I want to show you is this rainfall on Wednesday, anywhere between 14 and 23 millimeters. And what I notice about that band, that means that we've got confidence there is some decent rainfall coming. Okay, so I want to have a look at our Jane Weather Pro version for Wednesday, Chuck on Pro, and look at that consensus in the models. Those models are all decently showing at least a mil, if not 2 mils an hour for about a 20-hour period. So Wednesday is definitely the day to pay attention to on the north coast of Tassie for rainfall. I do want to show you that fog risk comes into Tassie for multiple days. We're looking at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday lifts off, Thursday, Friday it comes back again. So, yeah, fog coming, rainfall coming, but it changes every day. So, something I would say is that I can't give you a nice, neat story other than really that front arrives on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. This is a week that I'd be checking the weather apps every day or two just to remind myself where we're at, as well as with the pace that those fronts are moving. You know, sometimes fronts can stall, they don't make their way over. And because both fronts are arriving in multiple days' time, this is where I'd want to see how the models are developing and how the system is behaving in those days. Okay. So this is the week you probably want to check your weather apps a little bit more regularly than another week where we have a bit more confidence when those weather systems are arriving. Okay. Good luck. Have a great week. And don't forget, Farm Online Weather is there for you every single day. These maps are available to you as well as the models progress, so you can keep yourself updated. Okay. Have a great week.